Tribe. Welcome to Ghost Wolf Live. So, two things real quick. And I don't want anybody to freak out. One, I am currently sick. I don't believe it's COVID, just for the record. I've been sick on and on throughout most of my adult life. I was diagnosed with chronic bronchitis. And so I have these occasional flare-ups, and but this was a little different, and it was actually very scary in a way because of COVID, because not all, but a lot of the boxes were checked as far as symptoms. But there were some that I was getting that didn't quite match either. Well, hold on. Let me back up and explain this a little bit more in detail. So I was at work, I guess it would have been Friday. Yeah, Friday. And I was not feeling good at all. Um, and I was feeling a lot of the things that you're supposed to feel, I guess, when it's COVID. Things like uh, temperature fluctuations and upset stomach, nausea, dizziness, all that stuff. But there were a few things that didn't quite fit too. Like I was salivating a lot, like a lot, which doesn't quite fit COVID. Uh, I was dry heaving, which also doesn't fit. But phlegm was coming up, which immediately when that happened, I'm like, okay, this is bronchitis. And I was sick for most of today. Like, I didn't wake up until like 10 o'clock tonight. Um, Now, being sick like this, at least for me, is kind of a double-edged sword because while being sick is never fun, no matter what it is, um, for me, at least, when I'm sick like that, to that extent, it sparks my imagination. Because especially when there's like fever involved and I'm sweating a lot, um, I go into almost that more a creative part of my mind, that hallucinatory part, I guess you could say, and it gets my imagination going. And usually, when I get my imagination going in these ways, some new form of art or creation will come out of it. Um, and I've dabbled in a lot of different artistic disciplines throughout my life. Drawing, like sketch work, like comic book style, is one of my favorites. And writing. And when I'm sick, I like to watch TV shows on Netflix or Hulu or whatever. I'm sure like everybody does, but I kind of see it with a bit of a different eye. Um, Case in point, and this is my idea, so please don't steal it. I'm trademarking this shit right now, so don't steal it. Um, I'm rewatching for the gazillionth time the series run, the season 1 series run of Jericho, which is in some ways by far my favorite fucking TV show of all time, because it took this kind of, not really post-apocalyptic, because it's so much like what would really happen in this scenario, that it doesn't quite fit that category in a way. For those that don't know, Jericho was this TV show that had an outstanding cast, by the way. Gerald McRaney and Skeet Ulrich, and just to name a few. And it was about this town in Kansas called Jericho, Kansas, and their reaction to nuclear bombs going off. The closest one in the show would have been Denver, which is right over this mountain range where it crosses into Denver, or crosses into Colorado, anyways. And it's kind of an interesting story because after the end of season 1, they tried to cancel the show. And I don't want to give anything away, but I'll say that there's this certain conflict that happens between Jericho and this other town at the end of season 1. And there's a lot of like flashback sequences, and there's this flashback to the main character played by Skeet Ulrich. His name is Jake Green, and it's a flashback to his brother's wedding. And oh, mommy's home. Anyways, so what happens is it flashes back to when they're in this neighborhood bar, and it's a conversation between different parties of different members of the wedding party, including Jake's grandfather, who was alive at the time, retelling the story of what happened when he was in the airborne during World War II, and it's actually a true story, and it's kind of funny. So what happened in World War II with the airborne, certain airborne units? They were outside of this town called Bastogne in France, and they were in the woods, and the Germans who had the town knew they were there and were shelling them with artillery, like practically day and night, and hitting them with machine guns and shit. And the airborne was there in the middle of winter, which very cold conditions, snowfall practically every day, and they had no cold weather gear at all. They didn't have, most of them didn't even have extra changes of socks. They had barely any ammunition, hardly any food. Like, it was horrible. It was horrible by all, definitions. It was a horrible situation to be in. And the Germans knew this. Okay, they were very aware of their situation, and so the general in charge of that, I guess, division of SS or whoever they were in Bastogne sent a communique to the Allied general, whose name escapes me, but it was basically saying, there's no defeat and surrender, you can surrender now, blah, 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 all this other stuff. Very eloquently written, but, very, kind of self-serving in that way that, well, if I get them to surrender, this will make my career kind of thing. And the Allied general sent back a one-word reply, which was nuts. Now, back in 1930s, 1940s parlance, nuts, saying nuts to somebody was like saying kiss my ass or fuck off. Because they didn't really, cussing existed obviously, but most people tried to keep it clean, so to speak, primarily on radio and TV and whatnot. So they invented these terms like nuts and what have you. And so this general saying nuts was basically like saying fuck off, and became part of history. And so Jake's grandfather's retelling this story, and it, for whatever reason, it sticks. And then there's this scene between the town of Jericho and this other town, and the leader of the other town is on the radio saying, well, you need to surrender because of this and that and the other thing. And Jake, the main character, who's now in charge for reasons I'm not going to go into, says nuts. So, fans of the show did not want it to be canceled. And they didn't want it to be canceled to such an extent that they got together and did like a GoFundMe thing or Kickstarter or whatever the hell it was, and bought, I'm not kidding you, like tons of peanuts and sent them to CBS. So what ended up happening, because CBS wanted to cancel the show, is they did a season 2, but it was written so freaking horribly that it got canceled after that. As recently I found as like 2013, there were talks between the makers of the show, CBS, and Netflix to respawn, if you will, the series. Now, here's my thing. There's been great series that have been canceled by executives of these companies like CBS and ABC and whatnot that should not have been canceled, first off. So let's be very real about that. These are people that for whatever reason, and I'm not taking anything away from them, I'm sure they do a great job. But they're blinded by that view from being corporate on high. And so a lot of the times, in my opinion, they kind of miss the big picture. Because they're so looking at the big picture, it's so up in their face that they can't see anything else, if that makes sense. And so essentially what they did with shows like Jericho or Firefly or whatever, Midnight Texas would be another good example, is they've taken these shows that were not only fantastic and canceled them way too soon, they killed all the spin-off potential as well. Like Jericho, for example, one thing, like back when this show was on, that I could see was this huge potential for spin-offs. Because if this is going on in Jericho, what is going on in other towns, right? And one of the towns that they mention in this show is a town that I used to live in, San Diego. Okay? And San Diego, in the show of Jericho, was one of the towns that was hit by a nuclear bomb, is what they're alluding to. Right? And it actually, a lot of the earlier episodes actually kind of take place via flashbacks and whatnot in San Diego. Right? Well, I lived in San Diego, so I can tell you about it. San Diego isn't like Akron, Ohio, or a lot of other places where the town is the town, right? When you say San Diego, you're not just talking about downtown San Diego, the actual town of San Diego. You're also talking about the whole county, and those counties, particularly in Southern California, are fucking huge. For my Ohio listeners, San Diego County would encompass not only like Akron and Barberton and Wadsworth and Rittman and Doylestown, all these outlying communities. It would encompass all of that. Plus, it would encompass like all of the outlying areas of Cleveland too. Massive county. Okay. So, if it hit downtown San Diego, which would make sense because it's by where all the naval bases are, that would mean that a lot of the outlying communities would be okay. Still. You got towns like the ones that I lived in, Lakeside and El Cajon, would be okay because they're so far away from downtown. They would have to worry about fallout, like they had to worry about season 2 of Jericho. Or, not season 2, but episode 2 of Jericho. But they won't have to worry about the blast itself because they're so far away. Right? But it being Southern California also opens it up to, well, how would a nuclear explosion react to the tectonic plates? So you could have this whole thing about them having to survive not only nuclear fallout, but earthquakes as well. And, which would open it up to all this other stuff too. And then on top of that, you've got their proximity to Mexico. And how all that would relate to the storyline. You know, you could either have like an influx of immigrants moving south for a change, right? And how they would have to deal with that. And then you would also have the likelihood of like the cartels coming north, trying to take shit over because they see it as an opportunity. Shit like that, right? And my brain just starts moving and moving and moving and thinking of all these fucking ideas and how epic it would be to have a spin-off show placed in El Cajon, California, in the world of Jericho. And the beautiful thing about it is you could take it so that it's what is happening immediately after the explosion. So you don't have to worry about like set design and all that shit so much, and you could film it locally in El Cajon, which I'm sure they would fucking love. And you would have basically like a big budget type of production for a lower budget, because you won't have to do all that stuff. You know, and El Cajon in itself is a unique place already. I mean, aside from like the way everything's laid out, like there's no really big buildings in El Cajon. Like there's no skyscrapers really. I think the tallest building in El Cajon is the jail, which is like I think like 8 stories high or something like that. So I mean it's tall, but it's not like ridiculous tall like you'd find in New York or even LA or any of these other big metropolises. And it's got a distinct, you know, Southern California flavor to it, where, you know, you're inland enough that it alters things a bit, but you're close enough to the beach that you could have people, like in the show, that go surfing every day. And that could even be like where they discuss the, you know, the next big move that they're going to make, and kind of hold council out in the ocean, right? And you've got all these other possibilities of, you know, what can happen. You know, you've got reservoirs and dams in Southern California too, you know, and all this other stuff that could just play right into the storyline. Right? And then you take all of that and you add to the fact that, not so much anymore as far as I know, but back in the day when I lived there, which was like back in the 90s and early 2000s, El Cajon, California was considered to be the meth capital of the world. So you've got that whole like almost Breaking Bad angle going on too. And you've got so many things that you could put into the story that, quite frankly, just those possibilities alone make no sense as to why they canceled Jericho in the first place. There were so many possibilities of where they could have taken this show. And season 2 was kind of horrible, but there were some gems in there too, for sure. Just speaking, is not even talking about the actors. They did a fantastic job. They made it far better, in my opinion, in season 2 than it should have been. Okay, which is saying a lot. Because it was written very poorly, I'll be honest. And not the actor's fault, obviously. Not even like the showrunner's fault. It's purely the fault of CBS and their writers that wrote season 2. It was not great. But even so, there were some gems in there. Like they explored the idea of well, there's no longer a president. There's quite a few of them. And so far, the one that we're following is on top, but not necessarily. And how different states like Texas have completely seceded from the United States and blah, blah, blah. And all these other ideas about how the world could look. And what was beautiful about the whole show is they did it in such a way that you could actually see it happening. I mean, they didn't go over the top, really, with much of anything. It was all, like, legit. Like, yeah, this is how it would happen. Like how in episode 2, they have this storm coming from Denver, which means it's clouds full of fallout coming right at the town of Jericho. And, it's actually real that in that situation, if you have a basement, you'd be okay, but you would have to cover all your doors and windows with plastic and duct tape. And then after that rain, after that fallout, you would have to dig down at least 18 inches and remove the first 18 inches of topsoil before you could plant again. Because the first 18 inches would be radiated. And how you would have to wash everything on the outside, everything, including the asphalt, off with soapy water to remove any contamination. That's real. That's exactly how you would have to react after fallout. They went out of the way to be very, very exact and real about how you would act in those situations. They didn't take anything over the top. And that's, in my mind, is one of the things that made it the best show kind of ever. And you take that and then you add to the fact that hold on one sec. You add to that to the fact that they had a cast that, quite frankly, was holy shit. It's so awesome. I mean, you got Skeet Ulrich, who you would know from probably the movie Scream, the first one. You got Gerald McRaney, who was one of my favorite actors especially when I was younger, living in San Diego. And a lot of people may not remember this. Gerald McRaney was in a show called Simon and Simon back in the day. This is I think 80s. And they filmed a lot at one of my favorite places called Balboa Park And Balboa Park has these museums that are, quite frankly, astounding. Um, one of which is the Aerospace Museum, which had it wasn't the Spirit of St. Louis, they had the first and only at that time um, 2-scale copy of the Spirit of St. Louis. And they have the Old Globe Theater, which is an exact replica of Shakespeare's Old Globe Theater from England, and it is awesome place. And they used to film Simon and Simon there, and as a result, I kind of almost by accident ended up as an extra on the show when I was a kid. And I actually got to meet Gerald. I'm sure he doesn't remember me at all. But I actually got to meet Gerald McRaney when I was a kid. Like we're talking like maybe 13, 14 maybe. And I'm 51 now, so, go figure. But you got him, you've got Skeet Ulrich, Elisa Coppola, who's one of the most gorgeous people I've ever seen, as well as Ashley Scott, who played Emily Sullivan. And then you've got well-known black British actor Lenny James, Sprague Graydon, who played Heather, and it goes on and on and on. And it was an ensemble show. I honestly think that ensemble shows are always going to be more special because they're ensembles, especially when they're done right. And Jericho, in my opinion, was definitely done right. I don't understand why they would have canceled this show, or even tried to. It makes no sense. Like, I could have seen it going on for like 10 seasons. But, definitely 10 in my mind, but like, they could have at least done 3 or 4. Maybe. I don't understand what the whole situation was. And, us mere mortals are probably never gonna know. But, this cast was, insane. Clayne Crawford, who played Riggs in the TV show Lethal Weapon. Richard Speight Jr., who in the show he played one of the deputies named Bill, but he's also well known for his portrayal of in the movie Lord of the Rings. He was one of the hobbits. D.B. Sweeney, who was one of the original members of the Brat Pack back in the day. Timothy Omundson, who you probably know from the show Psych. And James Remar, and the list just goes on and on and on and on. Theo Rossi, who you probably know from the show Sons of Anarchy. And it's insane how big this cast got, and how special it got, because you have all this world-class talent, and then you give them a show that they actually want to go to work every day. And I know this because I've heard them say it themselves on other podcasts and stuff, how much they enjoyed working every day when they were on the TV show Jericho. And who won it? I mean, they were like family, basically. And then they just, for, who knows what reason, fucking canceled them. And I'm sitting here going, are you out of your goddamn mind? Really? I mean, I don't know what, like, the ratings were for this show. Honestly, I don't. All I knew is when it was on the air, I could not get enough. I was so enthralled, not just by the storyline, which is, oh my god, good, but also by this powerhouse cast that they had. That these are all people I've seen in like a gazillion other things. Like Alex Carter. I remember he was only on, I think, like a couple of episodes of Jericho, but he played the fire chief. But I actually remember him from the TV show The Dead Zone. He was a regular on that show. And yeah, another show they canceled way too soon, in my opinion. Although a little bit more understandable because most of that was, Michael Anthony Hall and others just getting tired, honestly. But all these people, and most of them have gone other to do other great stuff. Like Sprague Graydon has been on several movies, TV shows. Alicia Coppola, who played Mimi Clark in the show, went on to do episodes of CSI and Law and Order, and was even kind of a regular, if I remember correctly. I don't know if you could say a regular, but she was in more than one episode of Criminal Minds. Ashley Scott, who's probably one of the most beautiful people on the planet, to be honest, has been in tons of other stuff. Lenny James, who went on to be in shows like 24 and British shows like I'm trying to remember the name of it. He was in this really cool British show. I can't remember the name of it. I would have to actually look it up. Where he basically plays a dirty inspector with Scotland Yard. Gerald McRaney, who, like, in my opinion, that man can do no wrong. Honestly, I've loved that man since he was in Simon and Simon. Kenneth Mitchell, he's been in tons of other stuff. He played Eric Green, Jake's brother, in the show. Brad Byard, who played Stanley Richmond, his best friend. Pamela Reed played his mom, Gail Green. And if you don't know Pamela Reed, you have not been paying attention, my friends. She's been on literally everything. West Wing, ER, just to name a few. Eric Knudsen basically started in Jericho. He played Dale Turner. And he's been in tons of other stuff since then. Claire Carey, Darby Stanfield, who played Jake's sister-in-law. Michael Gaston, Candace Bailey, Emily Rose, April Parker Jones, Esai Morales was in season 2. And the list just goes on and on and on and on. It's insane how many like superstars came out of this cast, and they just canceled it. The show got canceled. Well, they tried to cancel it in 2006, 2007. It was officially canceled the next season in 2008, which came almost 2 years later. But I don't understand why they would do that. Like, it was such a moneymaker. I don't get it. I don't understand how they could cancel this show. I don't understand how they could have canceled Firefly either, to be honest. I think what it is, and this is just trying to give the networks the benefit of the doubt, really, is that they have these great shows and they honestly don't know what to do with them. I think that's what it comes down to. Is they just simply do not know what to do with these shows, and they slip through the cracks. And another member of this cast that was, went on to do really good stuff was Brian T. He played a character named Chung on the show, and he went on to be in another show, which I believe was on NBC, called Night Shift, where he played a doctor, and it was awesome. And the list just goes on and on and on and on. But anyways, I just wanted to talk about Jericho because, aside from the fact that it was canceled way too soon, enormous spin-off potential. I mean, you could have other shows in the same world, like my El Cajon idea, or you could have, Yuma. It takes place in Arizona, or it's limitless. And they just did nothing with it. Alright, well, that's about my time, folks. Until next time, my pack, my tribe. Peace out.